Under 30 minutes today. All right, good morning, everybody. Once again, I'm trying to get one out by 7:30 today. A little longer daf, but it actually really flows quite smoothly. Assuming I'll be able to read and translate. All right. So we left off at the top. We were talking about that the part of the takana was there's a whole question whether it's simanim or deraisa, derabanan. So part of the takana is that a person who loses the object wants it to be returned easily. So the Gemara, first word, top line, a Kaf Chesed Aleph. So that way you find a bundle or they're all tied together, a bunch of loan documents. You should return it. Why you're going to say this is beneficial for the borrower, for one to go ahead and return these notes to the lender. In other words, if you turn to the lender will be able to go ahead and collect it again. So why is this in any sort of benefit to the borrower? So Ella, Rava meant to say was simanim deraisa. Really, simanim deraisa from a different source. Techsiv v'haya imcha ad reish achika. So it says over there, and the lost object will be with you until you go ahead and you darish, right? You darshan, right? You look into, you investigate. Achika. Understand? So you think that before you'd ask the person. So before you understand, you return it before you go ahead and even, you give it back even without simanim. Elo darshu, rather you go ahead and investigate imramai who or enaramai, right? Rather you go ahead and investigate, see whether he's somebody who is dishonest or not. In other words, he's gonna be a thief. He's gonna try. He saw his neighbor wearing it, so therefore he's gonna describe it, right? I'll go ahead and I'll describe. Oh yeah, a big white van. It says. A1 Comfort. A1 Comfort. I was thinking of the name for a second. It says A1 Comfort on the van, and this is my van, so return it to me. So I could be remote. So you have to investigate. So Gemara says la v'simanim. So and are we not talking about simanim? So we see the Torah says investigate by getting specific simanim, and therefore shmamina, and there learn from there that simanim are deraisa. And Amarava intim lemar simanim deraisa. And if you want to say that simanim deraisa, Gemara says, wait, pause. Intim lemar. You just concluded that simanim, in other words, that one brings proofs that the lost object is his by specific by identifying marks on there, but as deraisa. So why are you saying intim lemar? You don't say intim lemar when that's the mahalach. The Mashon Gemara says no. Digla memer kedashinan simanim. No, like we said earlier. Kadashina, that what you said earlier. Perhaps maybe it means is edus, right? The Torah doesn't say anywhere simanim. It says that you investigate. So maybe I investigate by I have two people testify that this is Avrami's car and not Yoel's, and therefore maybe that's what it is, and therefore it's a deflection that maybe simanim are perhaps not deraisa.
We learned that it's deraisa from the word simula.
No. From no. The word simula is something else. Well, actually. There was one of the points where we wanted to say last time, but that had to do with the type of sign. But over here, we want to try and bring the proof from Vahaya Imcha Adrosh Achicha. So the way the only darshan is that how do you go ahead and investigate? You investigate by having the person who lost it use simanim. So Gemara says simanim v'simanim. Let's say two people go ahead and give simanim. Yaniach. Just leave it over to a Navi. You don't know which one to give it with, right? Mayor comes to give simanim, and Jack gives simanim.
I'm talking about.
So that's it. Yaniach. No one is stronger than the other. Simanim ve'edim. If Mayor gives simanim, he gives an identifying mark on the object, and Jack has witnesses. Edim. You know, in the bala edim, you give it to the person who has the witnesses to support him. Simanim is simanim ve'edachad. If one guy gave siman, and the other one, so Reuven gave simanim, and Shimon gave simanim, and he also had one witness said it was his. Edachad, command the let's say. Well, truth is, you throw out the one witness, he's used the witnesses. And once again, this is the case of simanim versus simanim, which you just said earlier that yoniach asher yovel yo. Elia rigavaid in the filo. let's say one says, "Hey, I saw this person make the garment," and the other one says, "I saw the person drop the garment." Right? So Meir brings witnesses that he was the one who made the garment, he wove it, and Avrami brings witnesses that he dropped the garment. The Tinas and Fila give it to the person who had witnesses that he dropped it. Why? He might have sold to somebody else, right? Enough, and therefore the other person dropped it. In other words, it could be yes, Meir might have made it, but Meir probably sold it to Avrami because Avrami was seen to drop it. Obviously, it was in Avrami's possession. Midas Arko, Midas Rachlo. Wow. The second line. So Midas Arkov and Midas Rachel, one person gives the length of the garment, the other one gives the width of the garment. You know, simply Midas Arkov. You give it to the one which is longer. Right? Why? Because the one is longer. The Midas Rachel Shur Kamashayale, because it's very easy to go ahead and say, oh, he's a 34, or whatever it is, to say how much it is around it. And therefore, the one who gives the exact length is more trustworthy than the one who gives the exact width. So, as he says, he'll be able to go ahead and stand there. Why do you when the person's standing over there? But however, if it's just the midah of the length, then he wouldn't be able to go ahead and just know how long it is. So midas arko, midas rachbo. One person says the exact length and the exact width, and midas gomam, and the other one says no, the total amount, the total length plus width. In other words, he gives a ballpark number, and both of them happen to be right. So you know, in the midas arko, the midas rachbo, you give it to the one who gives the exact amount of the length and the width. Let's say one person gives midas arko, midas rachbo. One person gives his length and his width. When the other guy gives him midas mashkalesa, the amount of its weight. You not say the mashkalesa if you give it to the person who knew the weight of the item, because that's more trustworthy. Who am I? Simani I get. Simani I get. Let's say he identifies the get and she identifies the get. In other words, he says basically, I never gave it to her yet, and she's basically saying it was mine. I dropped it. He already gave it to me. And it was mine. And I dropped it. You're not saying law. You go ahead and give it to her, assuming that her husband already divorced her. So Gemara says, "But I understand what's the talking about? If we're talking about just the size of the get itself." Perhaps when he was holding the get, he never gave it to her yet. She saw it. She saw the size of it. He decided not to give it to her. He lost it. And all of a sudden, she's claiming, "Oh, he gave it to me, and I was the one who dropped it." So therefore, since she's able to go ahead and size up the get, we don't trust her. Ella Nekev, rather, it must be something very specific, like a Nekev, like a hole. So obviously, the only way for her to see the hole was it to be in her hand. The Nekev Yeshba B'tzad, oh, he's plenty of it. There was a hole by a certain letter, and right, because it's him or her. He's saying, yeah, they're both saying that this get was intended for her. He just say, I never gave it to her, and therefore she's not divorced, and she's like, I'm a divorced woman. Who I if they each say simanei achut, you're not saying no, you give her right the thread. So the girl says, "But what type of siman? If it's just like the color, let's say white or red, perhaps she just saw it in his hand, and therefore she was able to describe it. Right? Rather, it must be in the exact size. He says, I lost it in my leather bag. She says, yes, it was in a leather bag. You're not saying, "Lo, give it to him." You don't give it to her. My time, what's the reason? She says, she knows all those important, documents always go in his briefcase. So therefore, she's just saying, yeah, did you find it in a briefcase? And the guy's like, yeah, I happened to do it. So therefore, perhaps it could have been that he was never given to her, and therefore she had no idea. But she only knows because she assumes that's what he does with important documents. Fine. Anaya Mishnah. Mishnah says, until when? Until the neighbors know as soon as the opinion of Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Meir Shlosh Regalim, you announce it for 3 months. And after
3 holidays.
What did I say?
You said 3 months.
Oh, I meant 3 holidays, right? Yeah, the Shlosh Regalim. Have 3 holidays. After the last holiday, Shiva Yomim, 7 days after the 3rd holiday, right? Kadesh Yelech Lebeso, in order that he should be able to go to his house. Shlosh, and it takes him a 3-day journey to his house. The Yachzor Shlosh Yomim, and then all of a sudden he realizes he lost it. He walks back 3 days. That's 6 days. and then get to the announcement on the seventh day. So therefore, we give you 7 days.
And after that,
Then we'll see. Well, so we'll see. Let's see.
Yep. How many
So-
days do you have? 7? Didn't you have 30?
What
Don't you have like 30?
you
You know what
have?
I mean?
Well, no. So we'll see. So right now you have to announce it. If it's Siman amount, you announce it.
No.
So Tana. So it says Shechina Veda. It says over there you announce until the neighbors know. So because my Shechina Veda, no, right, you make aware the neighbors of the Veda. So Ilem the Shechina the Bala Veda. If you have to basically inform the neighbors of the person who lost the objects, if he knows who the guy is, to tell his neighbors, obviously just return it to the guy. Rather the neighbors of where it was found. And Rabbi Yehuda says he got 3 holidays. Right. So we are referring to the machlekes of is it by Baal Ta'achir, whether it's an order or not. So I'm going to assume that over here also it would apply. In other words, let's say a person has 3 months to go ahead and bring his carbon, but let's say a person did it right before Sukkot. So some say when you get 3 holidays, it really starts from Pesach is always 1. So even if you have Sukkot, that doesn't count, didn't start yet until you go Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkah. So, anyways, the Gemara does not go through it here. I suspect it is because it asks. We're referring to after the 3rd one. He said 7 days after the 3rd one. I mean, as a kasha, it says the 3rd day of Mar Cheshvan, we start davening for rain. And so, and the no, the 7th day of Mar Cheshvan. Why? Shahu Tesvav Yom. Achar Haregel, because that's 15 days after the Regel Kodesh Yagi Achron, still in our process. In order that the last person is a 15-day voyage to go ahead and get out. We don't want to start davening for rain before they get out. So it takes 15 days afterwards. So we're talking about post Sukkot, which is why I made my statement of the opinions to be 3 in order. But anyways, what do you see over there? You got 15 days to get home. So why here is our mission talking about 3 days to go home? Mm-hmm. You realize you lost it. 3 days to walk back. So what's 3 days versus 15 days? So Rav Yai said like Kasha, kind of Mikdash Rishon, kind of Mikdash Sheni. One's by the first base of Mikdash, one's by the second base of Mikdash. But Mikdash Rishon, the Nevisha Yisrael. When there was more people, Tuva Dechsivu, it says over there, Yudav Yisrael, Ravim Kechol Ashel Aliyah. All right, it says there's so many people. It's like the sand of the beach. So L'Roiv Avin and Kule, hi, and therefore you need plenty of time to go ahead and travel. However, Mikdash Sheni by the second temple, the Lo Nevisha Yisrael Tuve, that there was not as many people. Dechsivu Kol Kal. It says over there, the entire congregation was 42,360. So therefore, they didn't live as far out. It was a 3-day travel. So Gemara says, therefore, you don't need all 15 days. It's going to take 3 days. Suddenly, see the pasuk says, it says that the Kohen Levim and all those who served, they returned to their cities. So yes, it might have been less populated, but they were still living in the far off cities. The cave and the hachiyu. So you know what, Lamaisa, you're right. It's actually the opposite. The opposite of logic. What do you mean? Mikdash Rishon, the Nevesh Yisrael, by the first Mikdash when there's a lot of people, Tuva, and the mitzvah Alma, and then also the mitzvah to go ahead and go ahead and gather with a multitude. Therefore, the Greyhound was going. There was a full schedule. It was going all day, all night. It was easier to travel because since there were so many people, they were able to go ahead and hire more travels. Right? You don't need so much. You could have gone and Visagi B'Talas and go in 3 days. However, Mita Shady, the Lon of Yisrael, but Mita Shady was not a lot of people, so therefore the buses weren't running, the caravans were not running every 15 minutes. They were running every 6 hours, right? And therefore the caravans were not found. The Yazdi Ben Yamama, they were not traveling day and night because there wasn't as many people, there wasn't as large of a need. But therefore they needed the full 15 days. And Rav Amar really leisham b'mikdash rishon, leisham b'mikdash sheni, lo hitricha rabbanim aveda yosemidai. You know what? You know why it is? We don't do 15 days and the 15 days to walk back because we don't want to be matriach. A person who goes ahead and finds an object. A person finds an object. We don't want to be matriach there. And Amar Avinu Shmami, no. He machris when a person announces, believe a machris. He says, "I found a beget. I found a shirt." If he just says, "I found a lost object," instead of saying, "I found a shirt." No, because a person says I lost an object, then the person has to go home. Takes him 3 days to walk home, and then it would take him a day to figure out if he has all of his items, right? But by saying you have a garment, he'll be able to see right away whether or not he has all his shirts. So therefore, rather than for that they announce, I found a shirt. And Rav Amar even say, I found an object. Like we said before, you know what? You can say, I lost an object, and if it takes the guy, he has taken a little longer. Well, that's not on you. We're already being matriach you for 3 holidays to go ahead and announce it, and 7 days after. So therefore, 7 days is enough. The guy can figure it out. 2 lines from the bottom. Regal Rishon, Aimer, Regal Rishon. Right, the first holiday, he says, this is the first, holiday I'm announcing this object. Regal Sheni, Aimer, Regal Sheni, and Regal Shlishi, Aimer Stam. He says, I found this lost object without mentioning which holiday. Let him say Lego Shlishi. That's what it says. No, we don't want him to confuse with the second holiday. In other words, if he says this is the third holiday, maybe you'll think, oh, maybe did he say the second holiday? Oh, I have another regal. I'll get it, in 6 months when I come back for Pesach. So therefore, you don't say it. The Gemara says, Sheni Nami, right? Asya Lachlufe, that's my guess. Asya Lachlufe, right? Rishon, you're going to go ahead and confuse it with the first one. So why say second? You're going to confuse it with the first. The Gemara says, Hakasi Regal Shlishi. Okay, even if he messes up and assumes that the second one was really the first one, he's still going to be back the next holiday, and then he'll hear the achrasa then, and then he'll go ahead and claim his object. Top of the page, so the second line from the top. In the beginning, called me Shemot Avi you go ahead and announce it for 3 holidays. The Acher, regular after the holiday, Achron, the last one, Shivas Yamin, 7 days, in order for a person to go ahead and be able to walk home, it take him 3 days. The Yachzer Shleisha, and then walk back for 3 days. The Yachzer is Yom Echad, and then announce on the last, then one last day, the last day to find the guy who has his object. However, once the temple was destroyed and should be built speedily in our days, they said, you know what, the person should go ahead and announce it in shuls. In Batim Midrash, however, once the Anasim was what they are increased, there are a lot of these Anasim, these guys who are Eines, right? Sounds like something which is forces you. So just tell your neighbors, and that's it. You don't make a big to-do about it because people go ahead and be chop it up. What do you mean? My Mishra Anas. So what does it mean when they increase the amount of Anasim? Right, it was like the Persian Empire. They would go ahead and lost objects were basically forced to hand it over to the government, to the king. So he found some gold dinarim. So Chaziyahu Bar Nash, so a certain Roman saw him, and he saw okay, so he saw. Okay, yeah. So he says, and he was the Kamir's and he was now scared. So I'm like, don't worry about me, Mr. Jew. Even though I'm a Roman, the lav Parsiyan, and I'm not one of the Persians. Anadami Avidas Lamalka. No, I'm not a Persian that says everything goes to the king. Therefore, do not fear. So tell about an Evan Toin Haisa B'Yushalayim. There's a big stone in Yerushalayim. Kol Mishav Avedo. Whoever loses the lost object. Niftal Hashem, go to that area. That's the lost and found in it. So if you lost a Veda, you go to that rock. If you found it, Niftal Hashem, go ahead and turn there. And Zaimer, and there, one person announces, I lost this, and that person announces, I found this, and they put them together for Simanim. They nice, and Simanim gives them the signs, the marks, and then he goes ahead and takes home. This is where we learn Subaru Imimchu Evanatoin. This is up there by the Maisa of Chonim Agil. One of the Maisim took a place around this Evanatoin, which was the stone, a large platform of stone that was used to go ahead and for people, for basically the lost and found.
The lost and found.
Now Mishnah says, Omer, a person says, he says, the object, I lost my shirt. But he not tell him to give specific signs. Do not give him. And someone who is already a suspected or convicted, whatever that he's proven liar, right? Even if he somehow is able to go ahead and manage to get a simanim, maybe he sees the guy wear the shirt all the time, therefore he knows identifying marks. Don't give it them. So as the pasuk says, until you go ahead and darshan, teachers as a until you go ahead and you look into your brother, whether he is a deceitful or not. So Rabbi, literally very similar conversation we just had. So Rabbi Yehuda says, you announce, I found an object. Rav Nachman Amar, Galima Machriz, you say, no, I found a shirt. Rav Yehuda Amir, Rabbi Yehuda Machriz, you announce, I found a lost object. Diamar to Glima, because if you say, I have found a shirt, so Machriz, Cheshin Ramai, perhaps people will come and say, oh, you found a shirt. Maybe I'll go ahead and I know it's his favorite shirt, and I'll give identification marks. Rav Nachman Amar, Glima Machriz, he announced, I found a shirt. Lo Ramai, Lo Cheshin. We're not worried about people who are deceitful. Because you could always, nothing will be able to be identified because perhaps he'll know even something very specific, right? Because he, spent time next to the person. Also, there's a little tiny hole right over there. So tonight, Amar so wait, so we have a Mishnah that says if he says our Mishnah, it says what he identifies the object, but he doesn't any marks on it. And I was he said I lost a shirt. Do not give to him. Now, if I understand this Mishnah makes sense, if you announce I lost an object, and a person comes along and says, "Hey, I lost a shirt," and it was a shirt, right? Without giving simanim, and then our Mishnah teaches you afagav damar glima, even though he knew that it was a shirt. If he didn't give an identifying mark, then we don't go ahead and return it. We say, I found the shirt, right. And Amar Ihu Glima, and the guy says, you found the shirt, right? I lost the shirt. Do you have to tell me that you don't return them? Of course you don't return them. You said, I found the shirt. The guy's like, oh, I lost the shirt, right? So how do I know it's yours? Obviously, it's right. So obviously, that if he doesn't give any simanim, then he just says, basically repeats what you say. Certainly, you wouldn't go ahead and give it back. So is really you say, I found the shirt, and Amar Iyu, and he says glima. That which he says, oh, I lost a shirt. Amar Iyu, it means simanim. Right, and it really just means that he gave signs. So why did it say he just said a shirt and he didn't give signs? Well, my lomar simanaha. What does it mean that he didn't give identifying marks? So lomar simani mufhagim did. He didn't give something very specific that only the owner would know. He would know that maybe the tag on the inside was written something on there, and therefore that's his identifying mark. That's siman mufhag. He just gave, it was a 34 and 15 and a half neck. So it's just common, not exactly great siman.
Why should warm water?
Yeah, exactly. The Ramai, and the Ramai guys, the sequel, even though he says he gives the simanim, don't give it to him. So Rabbi whoever lost the object and he gave identifying mark, then you'd be able to go ahead and take it. However, once they increase the amount of people who are deceitful, then they would tell him to say, go ahead and bring witnesses that you are not deceitful about your character, Vital, and then you'll be able to go ahead and take. Like the father of Papa, right? He lost donkeys, Vashku, and it was found also because they made the Rabbi Bar Rav Huna. So he gave the simanim about his donkeys to Rav Huna. Samarlei, as Allah says, Zil Aisi Sadi, the Lav Ramayat, you, father of the great Rav Papa, go ahead and bring witnesses that you're not a liar, you're not deceitful. And then you go ahead and you'll take the object. So Azal, Aisi Sadi, he went ahead and he brought witnesses. Amarlu, he said to him, Yadasam Be Ramai, do you know this father of Papa as being deceitful? Who? So Amarle, so they answered, yes, he is deceitful. So Amarlu, so Rav Papa's father, he was flabbergasted, turned around and says, Ana Ramai? Says, right? What? I'm deceitful? So he says, Ana Ramai, Ana? So Amarle, no, Anan Lav Ramai. We meant to say you were not deceitful. Oops. And Amar Ravuna, really, it must be that they messed up their words. They didn't switch around there because there's no way Rav Papa would have, the father of Papa would have brought these character witnesses, right? And all of a sudden they turn around and say he has bad character. Mishnah says, Anything, so Alan sort of asked this, how long do you have to keep it for? So anything that basically I find a cow or something, I could put it to work and it could pay for its upkeep. So right? I know instead of me just feeding this cow, let the ox plow for me, or I'll rent it out, and with that money from the lease, I'll go ahead and I'll pay for its food, and I'll wait till the owner comes and claims it.
Question or answer?
So it's a statement, right? Then you go ahead and let it work, and then with that money, it will the money from there will pay for its upkeep. But however, something that does not do work, right, and then you could sell it. In other words, if I have something which is not income producing, and in other words, if I go ahead and I keep feeding it, so I'm allowed to go ahead and take off from the price of the item. So if you lose a dog, and it's going to cost me every month $50 to pay for the dog, so the dog was once worth $600. You come after 4 months, you already lost $200. So therefore, it's a good idea. I'll sell the dog right now for $600, and I'll give you $600, and then go ahead and buy a dog when you get back, because you have to return to the person what he had. If I just pay for his food, and by the time you get back, it's worth less than, let's say, half than it was worth before, because I deducted the expenses, so it's not worth it to the person who lost it. So what can you do with the money? So Rabbi Tar for a nightmare, you can go ahead and put it in your wallet and use it. Obviously, when the guy claims that you pay him the full $600, but therefore if the money was lost, because if you say the money is not used, then you're like a shemer chinam. Shemer chinam is pater if it gets lost. So therefore, we want full responsibility. So you're allowed to use it, but you just obviously have to go ahead and give it back. No, don't use it. Leave it there. Put it in a box and hide it. That cash. Therefore, it's lost. You're not chayiv to go ahead and reimburse. So the Gemara says, you have to go ahead and eat and work forever. So Rav Nachman Shmuel ad yud beis chodesh. Up until 12 months, then you have to go ahead out and deal with the headache. After that, you can just sell it and keep that money. At Tanya we learn called part of a chum or anything like a cow or a donkey. But top of it, you go ahead and you're working for 12 months. Go ahead and sell it or establish it for its value, and then go ahead and leave that money for the owner. And the young calves and young donkeys, and those are a little more difficult to go ahead and manage. Therefore, we're only going to ask you to go ahead and watch it for 3 months. Then after that, assess how much it's worth, and then take that cash and put it aside. And geese and chickens, those are 30 days, because those are even more of a trouble. So after that, then leave the money over for the owner once he claims it. And Amarav Nachbar Yitzchak Tarnagolas Kebehema. Tarnagolas, the chicken's like a behema gasa. In other words, it is a full 12 months. And Tanakh still learn Tarnagolas ubehema gasa mataba behem shneim chodesh for 12 months. Mikan v'yelech. After that, some demeyam and then you go ahead and leave over the money. And regarding a calf and young donkeys, according to this second brisa, when we said earlier, was worth 3 months. Over here it says matapa b'hen shloshim yom. You only have 30 days. You have to watch it. Then you go ahead and sell these young calves, right? And after that you put money aside and you leave it over. And abzvein tarnagolim, which we said earlier, was for 30 days. The kol davar shitapo meruba. The care is a lot. In other words, that the take care of is worth much more than you can lease it out for. But Tava had only 3 days. And after that, you go ahead and you assess how much it's worth, and then you sell it.
Which is like
Rabbi says, Kasha agalim v'saychin. First of all, it's a kasha agalim v'saychin. It's a kasha on the calves and the cows, right? Or the young calves. Is it 3 months or is it 30 days? It's 2 different prices. And also, also it's a kasha between the geese and the chickens and the geese and the chickens. The first price said it was 30 days, and the second one says it's only 3 days. So Gemara says, kasha is not a contradiction. Hard to write. If they're able to go ahead and graze on their own, so their upkeep is not. So that's 3 months. But if I have to go ahead and hand feed it, so then it's only 30 days. And obviously not targeting. Also, it's also namila kasha on a kasha. Up Ravari when they're larger ones, right? That takes more, and therefore it's only 3 days. However, Habazucha, the smaller ones, those I can go ahead and feed them, not too much food, up to 30 days, and that was the difference between the two prices. All right, we'll stop here. The two dots. All right, let's a little shorter. Shkayak, everybody. Everybody have a wonderful day. Yeah, 7:33. All right, fine.